Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Ohio Has Issues.
I'm Mike Polk.
I'm Stephanie Haney.
You are watching Ohio's premier spot for weekly updates on Ohio politics.
And listening to some stellar music.
Absolutely. Now, why would we be grooving so hard, I ask you, Stephanie Haney?
We're just trying to set a vibe. Set a vibe for this show.
Okay, what's the vibe? What is the theme of today's show?
It's the 420 show.
It is the 420 show, as a matter of fact, because we've got some weed stuff to talk about here in Ohio. In case you don't know, Issue 2 passed in November, Ohioans, making recreational marijuana legal, just like medical marijuana has been for a little while now. And we are going through what you might call a bit of a growing phase with it, trying to figure out, trying to figure out how exactly this is going to work, who gets it, who gets the tax money, we're all figuring out we're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's right now.
Yeah, the nuts and bolts of it, that was a good one. The growing
that.
phase, I really did like that very
Thank
much.
you.
I love a good bad pun. Yeah, so here's the tricky thing about what's happening right now is it's legal to have recreational marijuana in Ohio, but it's not legal to buy it anywhere. And
Tricky.
that is one of the number one questions that we get from viewers is, when am I going to be able to buy recreational marijuana in Ohio? People don't trust that it's going to happen. I have heard from a lot of people, I don't believe this is actually going to happen. I feel like it's going to get changed. So that's what we're talking about today. We have an answer for you on when you will able to buy recreational marijuana in Ohio.
So stay tuned for that. I can't think of a better tease than that. We're going to let you know when you can buy that stuff. And you've got some experts lined up. You put together a star panel of people to talk to who can help us, help enlighten us on this issue.
Yeah, just to give you a quick rundown of the people you're going to hear from today, we emailed back and forth with the Division of Cannabis Control in Ohio. They are the people who know what's up at this moment. We also talked with Ohio Capitol Journal reporter Nick Evans. We talked with State Senator Kent Smith, because there's some stuff going down in the legislature, y'all. They're trying to do some things there. And then we talked with two people who are big players in the medical marijuana industry here in Ohio.
I learned a lot from these interviews, and I think you will too if you stick around. But first, we've got to get to some politics here in Ohio, because that's what we do here. How about a quick rundown of just anything that happened this week? Just a little quick rundown. What do you say, Stephanie?
Let's do it.
Let's go.
All right.
I'll start.
First up, first order of business.
Okay, let me panic them. Hold on, let me find my panicky lead in. Will the sitting president be allowed to appear on the Ohio ballot in November? Because currently he is not. See?
Dun dun dun.
I've whipped them into a frenzy.
This is wild.
This is true though, by the way. Right now, Joe Biden is not on the Ohio ballot, but nobody freak out yet. Republican Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost has rejected the Democratic proposal meant to get around a legal technicality that could prevent Joe Biden from appearing on the ballot this November. Yost responded by saying he did not have the legal authority to do so. And that very well might be the case. So now Ohio Dems are going to have to find another way to get Joe Biden on the ballot, where he received over 87% of the Democratic vote in November. So why isn't he on there?
That is an excellent question. Why is this even a question?
There's a bill that passed there was something that passed in 2010. I don't know if it was a bill here in Ohio that ensured that the legislature enacted a state deadline that says political parties must certify their presidential candidates no later than 90 days before the general election. Now, the reason that they probably did that back then was because both parties were moving their conventions further and further, and they wanted to get it back earlier so the voters had more time to think about it. I don't know. But both parties agreed to it, and then ever since they did this, it's been a mess for them because they've had to pull it back a few times. So, for example, both Republican and Democratic conventions have conflicted with the state law since it went into effect. So both parties in years in the past have agreed to waive the deadline and when it has posed an issue. So why is it different this time, Stephanie?
That's an excellent question. If it's been not an issue in the past, I would love to know why this is an Ohio issue today.
Well, some people are suggesting that it has something to do with with the fact that it's not both parties that need to push the date back this time. It's just one party, and it is not the party that is in control of the Ohio legislature currently. Here's a little window into that. When asked for his opinion on the issue last week, Senate President Matt Huffman, an influential Lima Republican and irrepressible charmer, referred to the issue as a, quote, Democratic problem. In other words, you guys figure it out, essentially is what he's saying. Now, Joe Biden's going to end up on the Ohio ballot. It would be very strange if he were on 49 state ballots and not Ohio, and I think there might be a little bit of pushback to that. Although I am surprised by the amount of people who are actually telling me, people who know stuff, saying, I could see him not being on it. I'm like, really?
I'm never surprised when I'm surprised.
But this is sort of a, what's the term? Oh yeah, pissing match. Essentially, this is them being a little contentious with each other. This is party on party squabbling that will get resolved eventually. This is the Republicans in Ohio saying, we're not going to give you an inch, you figure it out on your own. And the Ohio Democrats are going to have to adjust. That's really what it comes down to.
Also, though, get your convention in line with the deadlines.
True. Come on.
National Democrats, come on.
We're not the only ones, though. This is also happening in Alabama in a very similar circumstance, except in that case, Alabama, the powers that be have said, we're going to resolve this and figure it out. It's here in Ohio, not Alabama, where we're like, there's just no way around this.
Seems like the reasonable thing to do is to have the sitting president on the ballot and not make that a thing. If
we could just catch up to the rationality of Alabama, we'd be in great shape here in Ohio, I guess. In this instance.
So that's what is up if you're hearing about the possibility that Joe Biden might not be on the ballot in Ohio.
That's what's going on there. What else is going on?
Okay, let me give you an update on the FirstEnergy bribery scandal. We're learning new information. It seems like new information just continues to come out in this case.
And it's grosser and grosser every time.
Here is what we know this week. We have learned that FirstEnergy gave $1 million to a political group that was backing John Husted. Now, of course, John Husted is currently our lieutenant governor, but this was when he was running for governor. So he was asked about it. He has not answered whether he knew about the money, but does say that the group was not affiliated with his campaign for governor. This was a group that is not allowed to be affiliated with a campaign. This is one of those super PACs.
Yes, and you would think if he had no knowledge of it, he'd just say, I had no knowledge of it. The fact that he just won't say whether he had no knowledge of it, although I don't mean to imply anything, and maybe he'll have a perfectly reasonable explanation, but eventually he probably is going to have an explanation, because everyone's saying that John Husted is eventually running for governor, probably in the next term. And at some point, he's going to have to answer that question. It'll be interesting to see how he does that and what the repercussions might be, if any.
And why do we want an answer from him on this? Let me just give you a reminder in case you are not up to speed on what happened with the FirstEnergy bribery scandal. So the $1 million payment was found, by the way, let's just give credit where credit is due, to an Ohio Capitol Journal reporter. This was in some documents that came from the Office of Ohio Consumers Counsel. Those documents also showed that Husted was lobbying our current governor, Mike DeWine, to support House Bill 6. House Bill 6 included the $1.3 billion bailout for a nuclear power plant, for two failing nuclear power plants that were owned by a subgroup of FirstEnergy.
Yes.
FirstEnergy paid $60 million in bribes to get House Bill 6 passed. And former Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder is now sitting in federal prison for 20 years, serving a 20-year sentence, which he has appealed, but he is serving a 20-year sentence for his role in that scheme.
Yes. So, dirty pool, everybody. Not a good scene. What's
one more element to this that I do want to note here too, because people died. Just last week, the former chair of the Public Utility Commissions of Ohio, Sam Randazzo, he died by suicide. And Sam Randazzo was under indictment. He was indicted by federal authorities in December, and then later by Ohio authorities, was facing 21 felony charges here in Ohio related to his role. He was accused of accepting a $4.3 million bribe from FirstEnergy for help in supporting getting this House Bill 6 bill passed. So people have died.
This whole thing is like a terrible, unreadable John Grisham novel that no one really wants to be a part of, and I wish it weren't in our state, but it is. Hey, give us an update now about House Bill 68. That's the transgender care bill.
Yes. Okay, so House Bill 68, that passed, and it was supposed to take effect April 24th. As a reminder, this bill would ban transgender girls and transgender women from participating in girls and women's sports. It would also ban transgender affirming care, or gender affirming care rather, for people that want to transition who are minors. Well, it's got a temporary stay in place. There's been a temporary restraining order put on it, so it's on pause for at least 2 weeks. This is because there was a lawsuit filed in Franklin County. The ACLU filed this lawsuit. They're saying that the statute is in violation of the Ohio Constitution in several ways, multiple ways. So we'll bring up Attorney General Dave Yost again, because he had a statement on this after this stay was put into effect. So here's what he said. Big
Yost Day here on Ohio Has Issues.
Big Yost Day. Big Yost Day.
Most Yost we've had.
It is the most Yost. Okay, this was his comment. He said, "This is just the first page of the book. We will fight vigorously to defend this properly enacted statute, which protects our children from irrevocable adult decisions. I am confident that this law will be upheld." So that is his opinion. Obviously, the ACLU has a different opinion.
Okay, now I understand you also have an update on the Senate candidates. We've got Bernie Moreno against incumbent Sherrod Brown. And we now know how much money they got. I look at, you can see Jeopardy in the background behind us, by the way. But we also now know, don't look at the answers. We also now know how much money each of them are sporting at this point in the campaign. Why don't you give us an update on that?
Yeah, so this is reporting from Haley B. Miller from USA Today Network. She is a friend of the show.
Does good work.
Very big fan of her work. So according to Bernie Moreno, who is the Republican Senate candidate, FEC filing, he loaned his Ohio Senate campaign another $300,000 last quarter. So his total personal investment is now $4.5 million in his campaign. And he ended the quarter with about $1.8 million cash on hand. And in contrast, the reporting from Haley B. Miller on Senator Sherrod Brown's campaign, the current sitting senator, the Democratic incumbent who was running, they'll both be on the November ballot. His campaign has almost $16 million in the bank.
Wow, that's a stark difference.
Yeah.
Really. But
big
it's early, and plus super PACs are getting involved, and plus all it takes is just like the right billionaire to say like, you know what, I'm going to put $2 billion into your super PAC for this guy, and then all these things can be wiped out that easily. Because the system works.
Well, it is true that, we don't know exactly how much money is out there in terms of the super PAC.
Sure.
This is just their campaign finances.
The campaign.
We have no idea at this moment how much money is sitting there ready to unload in this Senate race.
One thing that's important, a little minor thing that's important about whether that money is actually campaign money or super PAC money is you can legally spend that differently. In that if it's goes directly to your campaign, you get a much lower rate on a lot of the ads and TV ads and stuff like that if it's coming from your campaign, as opposed to a super PAC where they can charge you whatever they want. So it is actually really good to have money in your campaign as opposed to a super PAC because you get better deals. Weird little fact.
Good to know. Good to know.
Okay, what's next?
All right, let's get to the marijuana.
Let's talk about it.
And let's listen to more of that sweet,
sweet
music.
Kick it in.
While we talk about it. We've got producer Chris Beebles over there on the ones and twos.
Bringing that heat.
Bringing in the vibe music, which we appreciate so much. Okay, so let's tell you actually very quickly where the Senate candidates stand on issue 2.
Good.
We do know that Senator Sherrod Brown said that he voted yes in November on issue 2. We also know that candidate Bernie Moreno said publicly that he would vote no on issue 2. This was on a show called Restore Liberty. He said that on October 12th. So those are the most public statements we have available on their stance on the matter.
So that's where they're at, folks. Just a reminder, what exactly does issue 2 do for us? What can we do now that we couldn't do before November?
It's a sticky issue.
Ooh, we're going to be doing these all night, folks.
It's a bit of a sticky situation here. So here's what the deal is. Issue 2 allows adults age 21 and older, you gotta be 21, you can possess up to 2.5 ounces of cannabis, up to 15 grams of marijuana concentrate, and then also you can grow up to 6 plants at home per person. And if you've got more than one person living in your house who's over the age of 21, you can have up to 12 plants growing at home.
Not bad.
For your personal use. The possession is legal now. What is not legal is buying it. So there are 2 major things that are not legal. It's not legal anywhere to buy it here in Ohio because there are no licensed dispensaries, but it's also illegal to buy it anywhere that is not a licensed dispensary. It's also still illegal to go into Michigan and buy it, for example, and bring it home.
You know, I've known some no good nicks who have done that. And I'm going to give them a stern talking to now that I know this. Thank you for that information.
It is important information to know. So this is the effective legality on the books. Issue 2 took effect December 7th.
Now, I saw that people can also grow up to 6 plants at home now, so you can grow your own marijuana at home, but a maximum of 12 per resident. So if you, say, live in a dormitory and you live there with 600 people, you can't say, well, we each get 6, right? And then, take over the world. You have to have, it's just a minimum, you have to have a maximum of 2 people for that.
I think somebody wasn't listening when I was saying that a minute ago.
Sorry about that.
But that's okay. I liked hearing it again. It's important.
I was in another world.
It's like you have this fog about you.
We were pre-partying.
A little bit of a fog over you. No, listen, okay, here is an answer to a question that people have been asking. So we got this answer from the Division of Cannabis Control. These are the people who are responsible for licensing in Ohio. These are the people who are responsible for making licenses available to already existing medical marijuana dispensaries and also eventually people who don't already have
So
the dispensaries.
a good authority on the subject.
They are the authority on the subject. That's important because there's a lot of conversation going on about what the legislature is doing. Right now, issue 2 is the law.
And
issue 2 is in effect.
So it's in the hands of these people, and what do they say?
It's in the hands of these people. Okay, so we have a quote from them, so I want to read that to you now. The Division of Cannabis Control remains on schedule to make dual-use permit applications available to current medical permit holders no later than June 7th. So application process opening June 7th if you are already operating a medical marijuana dispensary in Ohio. And to begin awarding permits no later than September 7th, as laid out in the voter-initiated statute. So that's the key. They will be giving those permits by September 7th, and as you will learn in these conversations that we're about to have, there are people in the medical space already who are ready to go. They are ready to go on September 7th.
Yes. So we are going to be talking with some of these people and getting some of this insight, including our first guest. We're going to be talking to Nick Evans. And Nick Evans, this is my first time meeting him, and he had some very valuable information. He's from the Ohio Capital Journal, and he was great.
Yeah, he has been reporting for NPR for the last 7-8 years. He's been part of newsrooms that contribute to NPR. Now he's with the Ohio Capital Journal. He moved to Columbus in 2018. He's covered city council, he's in the state legislature, he's doing the thing, boots on the ground, asking the questions, covering Ohio politics. And we talked to him about what the deal is in the legislature because the legislature wants to make changes to issue 2, but they haven't done it yet.
What's the holdup? Nick Evans is a great reporter with the Ohio Capital Journal. He's covered politics for a long time and a bunch of other stuff. You're a jack of all trades, really. I've seen some of your sports stuff and everything. You cover a little bit of everything. Isn't that right, Nick?
Wow, if you were digging into sports stuff, that's quite a while ago. Yeah,
I've done my research.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well, now you're stuck here in Ohio with us and covering Ohio politics. It's a crazy world out there, and in particular, we've got this one thing going on in our legislature that is hard for everybody to process, including me. I'm hoping you can shed some light on it. We have a battle going on that's been going on for quite some time between the Senate president and the Speaker of the House, I guess, and their affiliates. Can you just break that down for us and tell us this is Republican infighting within our legislature?
Right. So the two things that you have to understand about Ohio is that we have term limits, and those term limits are kind of meaningless. If you're willing to go from the House to the Senate and back to the House and then back to the Senate, you can stay in office for as long as you want. Senate President Huffman is up to his term limit in the Senate, and so he's about to go back to the House. But the thing is, he's one of the most powerful politicians in the state, and I think he's probably gotten pretty used to that. The guy who was the presumptive House Speaker who ended up not getting the gavel would have been term limited at this point as well. So what Huffman was probably looking at, I mean, we don't know inside his head, but probably he was looking at 2025 as a chance to leave the Senate, go back to the House, and then throw his hat into the ring for House speakership anyway. The fact that Jason Stephens ended up becoming the speaker and has a little bit more time in his term limit while he's still in office, that means that Huffman now sort of has a fight on his hands.
Now, Jason Stephens did not get into that role alone. He got some help from somebody else.
Yeah, he got help from the Democrats. So all of this kind of goes back to the fight that we had last year that consumed everything in Ohio politics about raising the threshold for passing amendments to the Constitution, all in an effort to sort of undermine a reproductive rights amendment. There were some Republicans who wanted to force that onto the ballot in March, but there were some who just balked at that idea. The ones who balked at it were the ones who said, let's go ahead and go with Jason Stephens. And then all of the Democrats in the General Assembly joined in with them to give him the gavel.
And in retrospect, those Republicans who seemed hesitant about going full bore on that amendment, it seems like those fears did prove to be founded based on the reaction from the voters in that election.
Yeah, I think that they had a better read of it than their opponents.
And yet somehow it seems as though Matt Huffman doesn't see it that way, and doesn't say turns out you guys were right. My bad. He's actually still quite upset, and he is still making moves to try and get that power back. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at least when the first issue 1 failed, I don't think it changed his mind. I guess I would put it that way.
Can you give us a little bit about Jason Stephens?
It's hard to say. I mean, he is to me a little bit of a cipher. You know, like he was not supposed to necessarily be the speaker. One of the things that he did after the fight was that basically everything kind of went on hold for a couple of months. And so, I mean, he is a traditional like Republican, you know, but there's not like
He's not a flamethrower necessarily.
no, not necessarily. I mean, like, there isn't like a big sort of like set of policies that really jump out at me from him. I mean, like he just kind of seems like pretty standard middle of the road sort of Republican.
What effect has this had on how the legislature has been handling their business, having him there instead of a somebody who Matt Huffman would prefer, or Matt Huffman himself?
Right. Right. So, as I mentioned, the that couple of months where essentially the legislature took a few months off. One of my colleagues, Jake Zuckerman, you know, pointed
Mhm.
out like last year was one of the least productive years for the House in memory. Period. So I think that really what he has done in response to the infighting has been essentially pump the brakes. We will just wait. We'll just let this cool
Right.
down, and we'll come back to it later. It hasn't really cooled down. So, it's just sort of like is less than, you know, cooling down is more of a festering wound, it feels like.
And how do you see this resolving? I know that it's impossible to totally speculate too far out, but you must have some idea of how this all shakes out.
I think that right now you would have to assume that Jason Stevens is still the favorite to remain House Speaker. Um, there was a far, far, far more contentious primary fight this year in which more of the majority Republicans were trying to oust the 22 folks who backed Stevens to become House Speaker.
Mhm.
Those efforts were largely unsuccessful. They were able to pick off a few lawmakers who will, you know, no longer be serving when we get around to 2025. But in general, it looks like, you know, so long as the allies of Jason Stevens stay with him when we go to actually have that vote in 2025, he should probably still be House Speaker.
And are the Democrats still with him? Because they're largely
That's a
powerless
good
in the
question.
legislature, as you know. But that's something in his back pocket that Huffman does not have, is the support of those Democrats.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I don't know. I think that it's more likely than not that they would lean toward Stevens, but it's really hard to say.
Because they're not going to be like, well, maybe they'll choose a Democrat, because that's
Yeah,
not going to happen. So they got to think, you know,
yeah,
better
exactly.
the evil you know. Okay,
Yeah,
so now how does this relate? Today we're talking about recreational weed, which is all we want to talk about all the time on here. So finally, we're
sure.
getting around to it. And I want to know, first of all, did that battle affect in any way, that battle between them, have affected in any way the legislation moving forward on marijuana, or the marijuana bill law?
Yeah, I mean, directly maybe, but I'm not like certain. I mean,
Mhm.
just sort of the idea of like Jason Stevens has shown when there is frustration, just sort of like just we'll pause, like maybe that happened.
Hmm.
But more than anything, I would say indirectly, absolutely, it's had an impact because basically this fight, the internal squabbling within the Republican caucus, has kind of dominated everything that everybody has been doing for over a year. I mean, these people are exhausted.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the fundamental like disagreement that is at the core of this is forgotten, right?
Yeah.
It's like they are angry because they are angry at this point,
So it's
and
gummed
so
up the works on a lot of stuff.
absolutely.
We have other bills, or the House bills, that are supposed to amend this, or fix this marijuana thing that we all passed and said was fine, but now they've said, well, we got some tweaks to it, and we got several different bills in the legislature and in the House. House Bill 86, House Bill 354, House Bill 341, House Bill 168, all of which have to do with how to regulate marijuana. Is there any difference between those, and which one is the favorite right now?
Honestly, I think that that's a really good question. I don't think that any one of them is necessarily going to be the vehicle.
Hmm.
We'll see. But basically, what happened is you mentioned House Bill 86. That was initially a liquor control tweak that the Senate tacked a bunch of stuff onto. They basically wanted to lift the taxes on marijuana. They wanted to reduce the amount of home grow available. They wanted to place caps on the potency of marijuana. Oh, but any medical dispensary would be able to, you know, start dispensing immediately.
Okay.
Um, the House didn't take it. the House thought that those limitations that the Senate placed on it, those were too much.
Okay.
Um, in the House, Jamie Callender, a guy who has been working on the idea of adult use marijuana, a Republican, has been engaged in this for years. He presented a couple of tweaks to the law, but they're more than anything just tweaks. I mean, he wants
Okay.
to place an excise tax on the cultivation of marijuana. He has a handful of changes that would, deal with the rules, sort of like any place where you can't smoke a cigarette, you wouldn't be able to smoke marijuana, essentially.
Okay.
Like little kind of like openings that are in there that would be worth sort of like squaring away.
The first one you
Another-
mentioned seemed to overregulate, according to people, and this one might have underregulated because it's an advocate is putting it forth.
Well, it's not that he's under-regulating it. He's basically finding potential openings in the issue 2 language that
Thank you. That's a better way
need
of putting
to be a little bit like hammered down, right?
Yes.
Another thing was home grow. Essentially, like he wanted to say, like, okay, so if it's a total of 12 plants per household, you can't aggregate. You can't have like your neighbor starts a
Right.
community garden or
Mhm.
something, right? So like little things like that is what he was working on.
Trying to clean up around the edges of it a little.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
But that measure, it does not appear that the Senate is necessarily eager to take it up.
Hmm.
The thing for Callender, though, is he's sitting here saying, "Look, I got some fixes that I would like to put forward, but honestly, if we let this thing roll out as it is, I'm probably okay." So
Right.
he's sort of in a position where he can say, like, Come and talk to me, or don't."
Right. I gave it a swing.
Yeah.
And then the other two are just sort of similar, same tweaks kind of thing. The 341 and 168. One of them is he co-sponsored with Casey Weinstein. I don't know, is there anything different there?
So the Casey Weinstein bill goes way back before issue 2. I do not think that that is going to be coming forward because that was kind of that was the legislation that they wanted to put forward before issue 2 came along. And so now that issue 2 passed, I think that's kind of scrapped. Like the issue 2 is going to be
Got it.
the basis. The other bill you mentioned, 341, that's backed by a guy named Gary Click. There's a handful of changes in there, mostly like rejiggering the breakdown of taxes.
Okay.
Wants move more money to law enforcement and research. But a lot of it is probably not stuff that the average Ohioan would interact with.
Okay. So Gary Clicks is probably dead in the water, most likely, maybe.
I think that it's probably a messaging bill in terms of like I would like
This is what I would do.
elements of it might find their way into like how the tax structure works out down the road, kind of thing. It's sort of planting a flag in the dirt.
So it sounds like there's a chance that this might just go based on the gridlock right now in the legislature. There's a chance that this might just go into operation as is. What do you think the percentage chance on that is, just based on what you've seen?
I mean, I would say at least 50-50.
Oh, wow.
I mean, like like there's a lot of other stuff going on. I mean, we've had a very busy week of committee hearings last week. There's a whole bunch of stuff on lawmakers' minds. There's a whole bunch of stuff that didn't get done in the past year because there's been so much else going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like they may find a way to tack this on to something. But for the most part, I think that we've got rules that are set to take effect in June. The board that will handle handing out licenses, they seem to think that they can turn that around pretty quickly. And I think that a lot of Republicans are looking at the results of issue 2, and they're seeing deep red counties that passed it with strong margins. And they're thinking, do I really want to come in and make wholesale changes before this is even rolled out that
In an
might
election year.
be poorly? Like
Right.
it's maybe not the best look. So, I mean, there are aspects of it that I think will probably change. Like for instance, the thing Governor DeWine mentioned in the State of the State about like kids walking to ball practice and smelling marijuana smoke.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of stuff might be able to be handled in rule. But I guess we'll see.
This has all been very helpful. We appreciate you. And I would just want to say this. I hope this stuff goes into action soon, because right now we're just shoveling tax money into Michigan with all of us driving there probably once every couple of months. So for Ohio's sake and for the children, people, let's get this stuff figured out. Right, Nick?
All right. Absolutely.
Thank you for your time, Nick. Really appreciate you, man.
Anytime, man. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Nick Evans, gentleman and a scholar. I like that guy.
Yeah, so he is really good with the insight, on the ground. I really appreciated hearing all of that about the difference between the Senate president and the House Speaker and what the heck's going on in Ohio.
But here's my question for you, lawyer Stephanie Haney. Now, we passed two different things in November, Issue 1 and Issue 2. Issue 1 was a constitutional amendment, and nobody's able to touch that or add any new stipulations or rules to it. Why is Issue 2 different?
Well, Issue 2 was a citizen-initiated statute. So the beautiful thing and also the messy thing about the law is that it can change all the time. And Issue 1 can't be touched unless another constitutional amendment is passed. So and it's tougher. It's tougher to get a constitutional amendment passed. So that's the thing. So that's why there's some certainty with Issue 1 and the abortion access in the Ohio Constitution. But with Issue 2, the legislature is trying to make some tweaks. And, as you talked about with Nick, there's a couple that are just kind of stalled. They're not really going anywhere in committee. There's no motivation in the Ohio House to kind of move them forward. But there was one bill that moved through the Ohio House, and then it went to the Ohio Senate, and they did attempt to make some changes. Of course, that's got to go back to the House, and the House would then have to sign on with those changes. Doesn't seem like that's going to be super likely, but what I'm talking about is House Bill, I want to get the number right because 86.
There's like 17 of them.
Because House Bill 68 is the transgender care, House Bill 86 is related to changes pertaining to Issue 2 and legalization of recreational marijuana. So
real missed opportunity not being House Bill 420. I don't know how they number them, but somebody should have made an exception.
We should have had 419 other issues on the ballot in November, so that it could have been issue 420.
Marketing people. So who did you talk to help you unravel why all these things are being added and what people are trying to do?
Yeah, I talked to Ohio State Senator Kent Smith. He was a co-sponsor on the Senate version of House Bill 86, so the changes that came through the Senate that were passed there and then moved on. So he gives us a little bit of insight on why it was felt that certain things needed to be changed. So here's what he had to say. All right, Senator Kent Smith, thank you very much for taking time to talk with us today on Ohio Has Issues. And issue 2 it's an issue for a lot of Ohioans. We legalized adult use recreational marijuana here in the state effective December 7th, and the people are waiting. So that's what I want to talk to you about. So to bring people kind of up to speed on what's going on right now, House Bill 86 is something that you're actually a co-sponsor on. So you want to tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so issue 2 was passed as an initiated statute, different than issue 1, which was a constitutional amendment. And issue 2 as an initiated statute gives the legislature the ability to change it. The Senate made some changes, the majority of which I actually thought were good, which is why I voted for it and was a co-sponsor of it. But the way any legislation works, and you know this, and your viewers know this, got to pass one chamber, then it's got to go to the other chamber, it's got to pass that. If there's differences between the two versions, that legislation's got to get and reconciled, and then both chambers have to sign off on it. So the Senate took up issue 2 in House Bill 86. Made some changes that I thought were still sort of in the spirit of the legislation. And also I thought made some improvements. I wasn't 100% satisfied with it in all aspects. And there's actually 2 things that I would ask the House when they take it up to make some changes that I think would improve it. But yeah, as of right now, the legislation has only been approved by one of the 2 chambers. And obviously it's got to pass both chambers.
I guess first and foremost, let's get to this question because this is a question a lot of people have. Why did any changes need to be made to what had passed on the ballot in November?
Well, so it didn't, there was a couple of things that issue 2 did not deal with. And one of those was expungement. So that's something that the Senate added. We also created a vehicle through House Bill 86 for immediate legal sales, which was something that issue 2 didn't have fully fleshed out. So, that was some of the reason why I voted for it. We also added a county excise tax, a permissive county excise tax which is something that Cuyahoga County residents might be familiar with in terms of the cigarette tax, which then we use in Cuyahoga County to fund some of our arts and culture assets, like the Cleveland Orchestra, Playhouse Square, the Art Museum, et cetera, and also provide some grants to artists. So the thing that I added, the thing that I fought for and was added in the Senate version was a permissive tax that counties could use for arts, culture, entertainment, similar to the cigarette tax. And that would just provide another source of funding for the arts and culture assets that are so important to so many of the residents of Northeast Ohio. And again, it's a permissive tax. It's got to be supported by voters, but I wanted to create that method so that if county leadership wanted to pursue that as a funding stream and put it before the voters, they could. But yeah, we did address in Senate Bill 86 the ability for immediate legal sales to take place at dispensaries, which obviously is still not the case right now. And I would remind your viewers, issue 2 is actually in effect right now. Because House Bill 86 hasn't passed and been adopted in both chambers, there are no immediate legal sales. So issue 2, as passed by the voters, didn't have a vehicle to provide immediate legal sales.
People are very anxious, very much looking forward to those legal sales. So let's kind of get into that sort of element of it. So in Senate Bill 86, it provides for current licensed medical retail dispensaries to have a 1-year license, but also puts a limit on the number of retail dispensary licenses that can be in the state of Ohio. That limit is 350, and by my count, I did a quick look on the state of Ohio website. I think there are 122 medical dispensaries in the state, at least that many licenses out there. So how does that factor into other people who want to break into this industry? Because it doesn't provide for a way for people who aren't already operating a medical dispensary to then open a retail adult use establishment.
Ohio is just the 24th state to legalize. So I think it's important for us to learn some of the lessons of some of the other states. Some other states offered retail licenses to a lot of folks early on, and they're now trying to figure out a way to roll that back. I think it's easier to kind of, slowly move forward with this and see how, Ohioans respond to that. And if we need to expand, we can expand. But I do think the idea of, similar to the state liquor store approach of, you can't buy potent alcohol everywhere. And you just want to have a little bit more control over something that can be that powerful. And frankly, the medical marijuana dispensaries have already met some very challenging criteria just so they could operate. And since they have already done that, I think it makes sense to use them as kind of the initial to roll recreational marijuana out and initially to the state of Ohio.
It is interesting. I mean, I can't really conceive of a scenario where you would be able to buy medical use marijuana in a place and not also be able to buy recreational. So to me, it does make sense that they would have it. I just think that it is interesting that kind of just really does limit the ability to get in there, especially when there are going to be limitations on how close certain facilities can be to other facilities. So it's definitely interesting. I want to ask you about another change. As issue 2 was passed, it allowed for up to 6 plants per person and 12 plants per resident. So assuming that you're an adult and you're an adult that's cohabitating with one other person or more than one other person, but that it caps it as 12. This bill caps it at 6 per resident. So why that change?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Again, there were some aspects of House Bill 86 that the Senate made changes to that I was supportive of. The permissive excise tax for counties to fund arts and culture, the allowing of immediate sales at medical dispensaries, and an expungement program that issue 2 didn't touch on, and the Senate also funded it. So those were the reason. Those are the really strong improvements. Then there were some changes that were kind of made that I think are kind of like, well, is this good? Is this bad? It's just nuance. Home grow is part of that. The tax level was 10%, which would have been the lowest among states that had legalized. Other states were also at 10%. And home grow, while it's a little more complicated, 12 would have been kind of the high end. So the Senate kind of increased the tax level, decreased home grow to kind of put Ohio sort of in the mid-range of the 24 states that had legalized. There are some states that are legalized and some of them that are even blue states that allow no home grow at all. I don't necessarily think that's a good idea, but the changes were in terms of taxation and the amount of home grow were really meant to kind of bring Ohio sort of into the mid-range of the states that had legalized so far. Just to kind of try to put some people at ease, we're not going to get this all right, during the summer of 2024. This is the initial rollout. I think we'll all learn from it. Hopefully we'll make some changes that'll be, both easier for folks that want to be in that industry and folks who want to recreationally use.
And what was the reason, now to return to the tax issue? So the original issue 2 called for a 10% adult use tax. Bill 86 calls for a 15% excise tax. Nobody's going to be happy about having to spend more money if they want to get their recreational use marijuana. So why the reason for the increased tax?
Democrats aren't in control. I think we were just grateful that the Republicans did not decimate issue 2, because it is clear that the spirit of issue 2 passing was that the majority of Ohioans wanted legalized adult use marijuana.
That's certainly true. Yeah, it did, passed handily in November. People are ready for it. Interestingly enough, it is still illegal to purchase marijuana in other states like Michigan and then bring the product to Ohio. It doesn't mean that it's not happening. That is certainly happening. And then the possession of it is not illegal, but you can't buy it in Ohio. So interesting there.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're exactly right. Again, issue 2 had some problems with it. Again, the overarching spirit, I think, was that, the issue was put before voters. Do you want legalized recreational adult use marijuana? And voters said yes. The mechanics of issue 2 had some real failings in it. So yes, right now, legal to smoke marijuana in Ohio, legal to possess it, not legal to buy it anywhere, which is not, conducive to a safe product being out there for adult use. That's why, again, when the Senate made changes to issue 2, one of the things we added that we thought was important was having immediate sales be available at the medical dispensaries.
Now, under issue 2 as well, it does say in issue 2 that licenses are required to be allocated within 9 months following issue 2's enactment. So that was December 7th when issue 2 went into effect. December 7th, yeah. So that puts it at early September for licenses being allocated. You had mentioned October. So then what happens if we get past that? Do we expect to see this in the fall? I know you're not in the House anymore, but you spent many years representing Ohioans in the House. What's going on over there? What are your colleagues? What's going on with these changes?
I mean, Stephanie, I know that you know this, but there seems to be a proxy war going on between the 2 chambers regarding who's going to be not the current Speaker of the House, but the next Speaker of the House. So this is very much wrapped up in an internal GOP proxy war to see who's going to be the legislative leader, not in the session that we're currently in, but in the next session. So there's a variety of things that are going on. There's a ton of good, solid, bipartisan legislation that is going nowhere. And by bipartisan, I literally mean introduced by a Democrat and a Republican. Like, it can't be more bipartisan. And it is, so these are seemingly sensible things that, both sides of the aisle can agree upon. And that legislation is going nowhere because there's a proxy war. And again, I think we could have had legal sales by now if the leadership in both chambers could just get along with each other. Because again, there's bipartisan support for legalization. There's support in both chambers. And so So there's something else going on. And in this case, it's a power struggle to see who's going to be the next Speaker of the House.
Hmm. Now, this is a slightly different kind of question here, and I know there were some differences in where the revenue from this would be allocated between issue 2 and then Bill 86. So, what's Ohio doing with all this extra money? What's it going to do with this extra money? Sports betting is now legal in Ohio. Recreational marijuana use I guess is legal in Ohio and will be available for purchase here, sometime soon.
Yeah.
What are we doing with this money?
Well, so that's one of there's like as I said to you earlier, there's 2 changes that I wanted to make. This is one of those changes. The Senate decided to allocate the tax revenue that would be generated from adult recreational purchase in very specific categories with specific dollar amounts. That isn't how any of us budget our lives, especially if you don't know how much money is going to come in. It makes much more sense to allocate these revenues on a percentage basis, so that if you get $100, you know where that money's going. If you get $1,000, you know where that money's going. You get $1 million, you know where that money's going. The Senate decided to allocate it based on a specific dollar amount. Well, obviously, if the revenue doesn't come in and meet those projections, what do? You can't hit the dollar amount. You shortchange one and not the other. So that is a failure of the Senate version of the legislation that I hope the House fixes. It just makes much more sense to allocate the tax revenue by percentage. So, but again, none of that money has come in right now because there are no legal sales right now.
Yeah, we're leaving money on the table with every single day. And I'll tell you what, one of those states nearby that you're not allowed to buy it from, Michigan, is making a lot of money off of Ohio right now.
Sure.
For sure. I'll ask you one more question before we go here, Senator. What do you want to say to Ohioans who are anxious and cannot get their hands on something that might quell that anxiety because it's not legal yet for them to buy it here in Ohio?
Yeah, this problem, that problem has arisen because of how issue 2 was initially worded and put on the ballot. The Senate tried to fix it. I think we did. We need the House to act on it. And again, if you don't want to take our version, give us something else and we'll send it to conference committee and we'll try to get it done. But again, this, like much of everything else in Columbus, is involved in the Senate president and the Speaker of the House, the proxy war between those 2 individuals. I guess I apologize that this legislature is the worst in recent Ohio history and the worst full-time legislature of any in the country. That's not because Democrats aren't trying to get things done. It's because Republicans are engaged in a proxy war for leadership and are preventing this and a whole ton of other good things from happening, from getting passed into law.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Senator Smith. We appreciate it.
That was Ohio State Senator Kent Smith, again, giving us his insight into what's going on there. But again, remember, issue 2 is the law. So September 7th, people, that is the day that the Division of Cannabis Control says you're going to be able to buy your recreational marijuana. They could have done it sooner. They didn't. So that's the facts. September 7th.
Kent Smith. What do you think of the nickname Special K for Kent Smith?
I kind of like that
He
for
would
him.
love it. I know he loves it.
He'd be into it.
He'd be totally into it. Kent's down for whatever. Thank you, Kent.
Thank you, Kent. Okay, who do we have next, Mike?
Okay, now this next person we talked to, we've talked to the politicians, yammer. But what about the people on the ground who are actually doing this stuff? I've got somebody who I was very excited to talk to. This is the first person who actually brought legal marijuana to Ohio, essentially, really at a large scale. He's a cultivator and a businessman named Andy Rayburn. I had a great conversation with him that I thought was very fascinating, and I hope you enjoy it as well. Sir, thank you for joining me. I'm with Andrew Rayburn. He's the founder of Buckeye Relief, responsible for establishing Ohio's first large-scale medical marijuana cultivation facility, as opposed to the small-scale ones that my neighbors have started in their backyards prior to you. But you're the first one who did it for real, sir. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, you're the person to talk to. Your insight's important on this matter, obviously. Just as a reminder, we're telling our audience about what the holdup is on them being able to buy recreational marijuana here in Ohio. And of course, you as one of the Cleveland Doms of, I guess you shouldn't put it like that, one of the Cleveland Godfathers. That's still not great. One of the Cleveland leaders in marijuana and early people who were in early on it. Who better to talk to? So first off, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up being the first to start a facility?
Okay, sure. So I'm born and raised in Northeast Ohio. I've been an owner operator of my first business was in 1981 when I was a young kid, and I'm not so young anymore, and I've been doing it ever since. And I sold my first business that I took over in 81 and 99, and I went from deep debt to liquid, and did a number of other things like minor league baseball and some other fun things that actually were good businesses, and was working less and less. And I turned 60, and two things happened. I wanted to take one more at bat and do one more business, but I just didn't want to do anything. I wanted to do something that was fascinating, of interest. And I was looking at the national growing legal marijuana business. And this is about 2010, 11, 12, 13. And then in 15, a close friend of mine had come to the end of a 12-year battle with a cancer. It was multiple myeloma. And he was at Western Reserve Hospice, and he was, on the way out. And he called me one morning. He'd actually been working out of my office for 10 years. And he said, "You're not going to believe what happened to me last night." And I said, "What?" He said, "I smoked marijuana for the first time, and I slept, and I woke up with an appetite, and I don't feel lousy for the first time in 2 years." And he said, "What do you think of that?" And after I wiped the tears from my eyes, I thought for a second. I said, "Well, I think you should smoke more marijuana." And he did. And it helped him in the last 6 weeks of his life.
So that's what inspired you to move forward with this.
Yes, sir. I got very serious about this, and in 16 started putting together the Buckeye Relief team, which now includes 3 dispensaries called Amplify. And we got after it early, and we were the first license granted in July of 18. We got our go-ahead, we got our provisional license on November 30 of 17, and literally broke ground here in Eastlake on December 1st. The next day, we had prepped the land and we were ready to go. And so that allowed us to be first to the market. So when the retail market opened in January of 19, we were literally the only company with any flower. Our flower then was really, really below average. And we all sat down and said, "Okay, we're going to have to do better than this." And I'm happy to tell you that now our flower is the most popular in the state of Ohio, because it's really, really excellent quality. And it's the same team that grew the lousy flower in 19 that grows the best product in Ohio now in 2024.
You learn through experience, obviously. I've actually probably been on both ends of your experimentation there, the early bad stuff and the current new stuff. I have ulcerative colitis, and I actually have a prescription and everything for marijuana. So I tried it early on, and I'll tell you though, I haven't as of late, because if I were to get marijuana now, I would probably have a friend probably get it for me from Michigan. If I were to do that, because it's obviously less expensive, it's recreational, and there are a lot of people doing that. We are now in this in-between period where we can legally have recreational marijuana in Ohio, but we can't get it yet. So tell us, in your opinion, as somebody on the inside, what's the biggest holdup from letting that happen?
Yeah. So there actually there's not actually a holdup, but the question you're asking is legitimate because people feel that there is. The law passed on November 11, and I'll remind everybody that passed by 57%, which I'm not a big political guy, but people that know politics tell me that's an overwhelming number, 57 to 43. And we may get back to that later, which is why I bring it up. But and the law called for a rulemaking period of time by our regulator, the Department of Commerce, who are very reasonable to work with, by the way, of having those rules ready by September of this year of 2024. So those rules are in the process of being written and in various stages of formal approval. So what the real issue is that timetable was poorly communicated by the industry and others, so that, you know, people thought on November 12th, the day after the election, you could go buy recreational marijuana, but that's not the case. With that said, we do expect it to be coming in the next couple of months.
That's good news for people who are in need. What are the tweaks that you would like to see made, if any, to the current bill, the current law?
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of discussion about that. And the answer to your question is a very simple no tweaks. The law is written. Issue 2 is the law. Issue 2 was very, very carefully crafted to take care of the people of Ohio and to allow them to stop buying that unidentified, you know, baggie of marijuana in the back alley that, by the way, is illegal, and to come to places like our dispensaries, Amplify, and the other existing 122 dispensaries in the state of Ohio, and buy safe, tested, consistent, reliable, and legal product.
So you're fine with it as is. You think that this could go into effect right now, and there's a chance that that's just going to happen that way. There seems to be a bit of a gridlock in the legislature about what's going to happen as far as the tweaks go. And if nothing gets tweaked, then it just goes into effect as it is, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you think that would be for the best, personally?
100%.
Okay. Now, it was the Wild West, especially when you were getting involved in this industry, and it's still very nebulous, let's say. Did you have any difficulty at the time? Did you get a lot of pushback? Did you have to jump through a lot of hoops? And was it easier for you than you thought it would be to get this thing started, especially considering it's a new industry and something quite controversial?
You know, it's funny. In 2016, when I was putting things together and starting to build my team, I literally was not telling any of my friends what I was doing, because there were so many more people in the state of Ohio and across the country then that had a negative stigma attached to what we do than there is now that we have 5 years of an operating medical program, you know, and people aren't running wild in the streets and, you know, going crazy and you know, or even getting hurt by our legal product.
Seems like a lot of those fears were overwrought.
Yes, and it's like night and day. You mentioned the Wild Wild West. We do have the Wild Wild West, and it of course exists in the illegal market in Ohio, and it exists from here, the east side of Cleveland, about 3 hours to our north in a state called Michigan, where their program is virtually unregulated. Illegal product finds its way into legal dispensaries, believe it or not. And it's the exact opposite of what's going to happen here in Ohio. Ohio is possibly the tightest regulated medical market in the United States. The same will be true for our recreational market. We will be probably the tightest regulated recreational market in the United States, and it'll be the exact opposite of what goes on in Michigan.
Have you been subjected to a lot of oversight in any way, and has it in any way been heavy-handed? Do people come in? People probably get freaked out by a new thing. Are there a lot of people checking on you guys constantly?
First of all, we are extremely tightly monitored. I'll give you 2 examples. In this facility, which is 60,000 feet of cultivation and processing, which is where you extract oil and make cartridges and stuff, we have 180 cameras that are surveilling us, you know, literally every square inch except our locker rooms and restrooms. So we also, the other example was, we get inspected every 90 days here.
Okay.
We also get inspected at will at our dispensaries. Okay. So when I say that, it sounds like I'm pointing out something heavy-handed. I'm pointing out something that we love. We love the fact that we're extremely tightly regulated and monitored, because it keeps second-rate operators from operating in a second-rate or certainly illegal manner. So is it heavy-handed? Not at all. Not in my opinion, not in our opinion. We welcome the scrutiny and we welcome the tight regulations.
How has your relationship been with, you obviously can't do this without help from people in the government. How has your relationship been with Ohio's politicians? And is there any conflict or anybody you'd like to commend for how you were able to make this happen?
Yeah. So in addition to being the owner of Buckeye Relief and Amplify, I also am the head of the state association, which we have about 60% of the license holders in the state is what our association is now. And by the way, I'm the head of that because of two reasons that I like to cite. I'm old and I'm stupid, which means I keep saying yes to being president. But so I interface to a massive amount with the Department of Commerce, our regulator, and they're very, very reasonable to work with, as I said before. The legislature, there are some members of the legislature that just simply don't accept our market as a legitimate one. And the argument I present there is, okay, if you have kids or people that have kids in high school or college, you do realize that any one of those kids can go buy a bag of marijuana whenever they want to, except it's illegal and it suffers from the other stuff I mentioned earlier. Our program is 21 and over, so kids can't possibly fake ID their way into a dispensary. The checkpoint is too thorough. So we're actually the people that keep our products safe and away from children. And everybody knows that reality about, kids in high school and college, being able to do what I described. But when it comes to the vast majority of legislators, they understand the reality of how things work, and that what we do is provide safe product. And incidentally, it's going to be taxed now with hundreds of millions of dollars going back to improve various areas of how our state runs. So, we like working with the legislature. I also have a good deal of contact, and many of us do, with the governor's office. The governor really tries hard to understand what we're doing, as do the other, statewide officials that we interface with, virtually all of them. So they're all trying to be very helpful to the program. We often need to give them some suggestions on perhaps how to be more helpful and less detrimental. But we do find that people are reasonable and want to hear what we have to say.
Good. Well, I'm sure they do like the idea of all of that tax revenue. That's got to help a little bit. Where do you think that should go? What would be your priority first? Where should all the tax money go, in your opinion?
So it's very clear in issue 2 also where that tax money goes. The easy answer is it should go to help people in Ohio, and it will. It actually is divided up specifically in the language.
But they are trying to reallocate it. Some of these bills are trying to reallocate some of that money to
Yep.
different areas. Do you think it should stay as it is? You don't think it should be moved around to different places?
Well, see, I'm an issue 2 guy. I voted for it and I support it 100%. And so I like the structure, and we like the structure, and the industry likes the structure of how that tax money is allocated now. So
I'm sure you've thought about this, but you, by helping to pass this, you also are sort of creating a lot more competition for yourself voluntarily. Does that concern you at all? Are you excited about the market, and do you think it could actually help all of you by growing the industry?
There's no question that this market's going to help every license holder in the market, and there's room for a lot of new license holders, specifically initially at the dispensary level, because with the growth of where we're going to go, which is an immediate instant doubling of volume that goes through our dispensaries, we need more people to be operating in the market. So we welcome them. I'll throw some numbers at you if you want.
Please.
The medical market at retail last year was about $480 million. the recreational market, let's say in 2025, when it's fully operational, is going to be anywhere between $1 billion and $1.5 billion.
Wow.
So that sounds like a huge market, right? And it is obviously a huge growth. But this year, it'll be a number at or maybe a little below the medical pace of last year. But it'll, go running up when the rec market starts. But the illegal market will still be billions of dollars of illegal marijuana purchased in the state of Ohio. And the estimates are 1 billion to 2 billion of people that drive to Michigan to purchase.
So that money's going to stay here and stay here and probably not go to the drug dealer down the street. My sister's ex-boyfriend. It's now going to go to a safe place to actually regulate things well. So and the economic positives seem really exciting, which means probably a lot of people in Ohio, where frankly some of us could use some jobs, are probably going to be looking to get into this industry that's going to be here all of a sudden. What do you recommend to people who want to get into this industry?
Well, they should definitely contact Buckeye Relief and Amplify, because we're going to increase our workforce by some 50% in the next couple months. And everybody else, virtually everybody else in the Ohio market will be doing the same thing, because we got to keep up. We're going to have more capacity, and we're going to have to just beef up every area of our business. How to get in. I mean, a lot of people that work for our companies, Buckeye Relief and Amplify, have gone to the Cleveland School of Cannabis, for example. I'm not affiliated with the school, so I'm not marketing the school or anything,
right.
But they have a
You're
lot
not endorsing it, but you're saying that's one way that people are getting involved.
That's what I'm saying. Yep.
Okay, great. Any last tips or anything before we go that you want to say about the issue that you see coming on the horizon, particularly with when people will actually be able to go to the store and pick up what they need or they want?
Yeah, I think we're anticipating that we'll have an operating market this summer sometime, and we're operating our businesses accordingly. As I said, we've started hiring already. We're upping our capacities and producing more. We're making additional capital investments, stuff like that.
Well, I appreciate the time so much, and it's great to talk to somebody who got in on the ground floor. I hope you'll continue to be a resource for us if we need to talk to you later on, and best of luck to you guys.
Love to talk to you anytime. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Wasn't that cool? Yeah.
Interesting guy. That is Andy Rayburn. He is also the president of the Ohio Cannabis Coalition, which is sort of like a chamber of commerce for marijuana in Ohio, essentially.
I kind of love that, people like getting together, sharing in the industry. I also thought it was really interesting what he said about what made him get into the medical marijuana industry too.
Yeah,
that
good
story
tale.
that he shared about his friend.
And what I really loved hearing, Ohio jobs.
Yes.
I'm hearing about a bunch of jobs coming to town through recreational marijuana. It's sort of like, I just think there's a lot of potential there, and he's obviously excited about it, although he's obviously an interested party, in fairness.
He is, for sure. One thing that I have mixed feelings on this, though, about the first recreational licenses going to people that are already in the medical space. I think it makes sense in terms of getting this up and running and getting it moving, but it is, it was already difficult to get into the medical space when that first happened in 2019 here in Ohio.
Right.
And to kind of like close it off to people who want to be new to the industry at first is a little tricky, but issue 2 only provided for certain new licenses, you know what I mean? It didn't kind of like have that. So that is something that we will need to see come from the Division of Cannabis Control.
And so much of this really is dependent upon leadership. And I think having somebody like Andy, who I had not known before this, but who obviously knows his stuff and is very passionate about it, and seems like somebody who's interested, he's not interested in making a windfall of money. I think he believes in this, and I think he sees it as a positive thing for Ohio and for people. So having somebody like that involved at that high of a level and early on, I think is going to be really helpful for Ohio.
I think so too.
There's my piece. So we have one more guest tonight to try and make you as smart as possible about marijuana. And who is that?
You're going to like what you learn from this person, because I was really surprised at one piece of information that he had to share. So you're going to want to pay close attention to this interview. I talked with Fadi Boumitri. He is the owner and CEO of Ascension BioMedical, and he is a cultivator, a grower. So I talked with him about what it takes for growers to get recreational marijuana to Ohio dispensaries, and why he thinks people should still get medical marijuana cards here in Ohio, even though recreational adult use marijuana is going to be available and legal by September 7th, people. Listen. All right, now we say hello to Fadi Boumitri. He is the owner and the CEO of Ascension BioMedical. Fadi, thank you for being with us today. I understand you're joining us from Florida.
Yeah, thank you for having me. First of all, yes, I'm actually down in Florida, South Florida right now for a cannabis convention called Benzinga, where a lot of the CEOs and owners of the various cannabis companies come to talk with each other, see what's going on around the country and in the industry.
Well, it's definitely an exciting time here in Ohio, which is why we're talking to you today. You know, as a cultivator in the Ohio space, we kind of just want to talk about what we can expect here in Ohio in terms of recreational marijuana becoming available to people. So it kind of looks like what's going to happen is the people that currently have the medical growing licenses will probably get the first recreational licenses. Does that seem to track with what you're seeing?
Yep, that's exactly what we're expecting. Sometime probably in June is when the DCC, the Department of Cannabis Control, is going to issue what they're calling dual use licenses, which are the medical licenses combined with the adult use licenses.
Okay. Here's, I think probably the main question I have for you as someone who grows medical marijuana. Once those licenses become available, you know, the retail licenses for sale will also be available, but is there going to be a lag time in terms of actually growing the product that becomes then available for recreational use?
Well, so the product that is currently being grown in my facility right now will be available for recreational use, but it will also be available for medical use. The issue that Ohio is going to have is that as all of these companies get issued their dual use licenses, it will take every bit of 18 to 24 months to expand our facilities. So obviously we'll have some product to market, but we're not going to have nearly as much product as we'll have in 24 months when we are fully built out. So Ohio will have a little bit of a underserved market for the first 24, I would imagine. But once all of the additional canopy that is being issued with these dual use licenses gets built and gets brought online, then I think the Ohio market will stabilize, regulate, and will slowly start to do what all the other markets do, which is come down in price.
Oh, okay. That's interesting to know. I know people will probably be very interested to hear about the price coming down, especially with some of the tweaks that we're seeing in the legislature with the increased tax over what was actually passed in issue 2. That'll be a factor.
Right.
Let me ask you this from a specifications or like a technical or a scientific perspective. Is the product that people are using for recreational going to be different than the product that they would use for medical? Like, what's the difference?
So there is only one difference based on the language of the adult use initiated statute that passed versus what's currently in existence in the medical program, and that is the percentage of THC in extracted products in the medical market will still be capped at 70%, whereas in the adult use market it will be capped at 90%. And you need to think of this not as how strong is the product as opposed to how pure is the product. Frankly, the 70% rule doesn't make any sense. Nowhere else in the country or in the world does that exist other than in the state of Ohio. So it doesn't really make sense to have that. I do think that the legislature should be looking at how they will change that because it is in statute. So it does require the legislature to change that portion. But in an ideal world, you should actually allow the medical patients to have the most pure products out there. And my example on this is, think about taking Tylenol and think about me telling you that you could take this 250 milligrams of Tylenol, but I need you to take it with another 250 milligrams of something that is not Tylenol. That's all that we're talking about here is in the 70% case, 70% of what you're getting is Tylenol and 30% is something else. So it doesn't mean you're getting less than the 250 milligrams of Tylenol. All that it means is that you have to get more of something else, which decreases the purity. And a lot of times, unfortunately, depending on what you're placing in that product, could also reduce the quality of the product.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And when we talk about this from a customer perspective, you know, in other places, like for example, in Michigan, where you can buy either medical marijuana or recreational adult use marijuana, the prices for the medical are lower. Is that because of a difference in the product? Is that something we expect to see here in Ohio as well?
So I don't think it has anything to do with the difference in the product. What it has to do with is kind of the way that Michigan has set up their program. I don't know whether we'll see that in Ohio. What I do know is I expect that Ohio will see a difference in prices based specifically on anybody carrying a medical card not having to pay the adult use additional taxes for sure.
Oh, okay. So the way it's looking right now is if you have a medical card, you won't have to pay the adult use tax.
Correct. It'll be at least a 10%, if not an 18% savings for people based on the fact that they have that medical card. And I say it could be as high as 18 because technically Ohio has a rule on the books that says that you cannot charge somebody tax on their medicine, and it as a medical marijuana product, they should not be taxing people on those retail purchases. Currently they are, but I'm hoping, and patients should be out there advocating to reduce that and to remove that so that there is no 8% sales tax and no 10% adult use tax on the patient's products.
Interesting. Now, if someone, and we may be getting ahead of ourselves here, I'm not sure if you can answer this question. If someone with a medical card were to buy recreational grade, would they then have to pay the adult use tax on the recreational grade?
No. So my understanding of the way that Ohio plans to roll out the market is that a pound of marijuana is a pound of marijuana. And once you walk up to the point of sale, you either show your card and you exempt yourself from paying that 10% adult use tax, or you don't show your card and you end up paying that tax. So I know that we're seeing a dip in the number of people that are renewing their medical marijuana cards in Ohio. I think that is it's not a good practice. You know, the amount of money that patients will save just by keeping their card, I think, in my opinion, is going to be more than worth it for anybody that buys a handful of times a year.
Okay, that's interesting. That's good to know. Let me ask you this. Do you think that it makes sense that the dual use licenses are going to be the first licenses to roll out from someone who's already in the medical space?
I mean, from my perspective, obviously, right? Not only have we proven ourselves I've been open almost 6 years at this point, proven ourselves to be operators, proven ourselves to be compliant, proven ourselves to be in line with all the regulations in Ohio. We're also already able to supply the market tomorrow if we needed to. Whereas if they handed out additional licenses and waited until those licenses became operational, it would be an absolute minimum of 2 years before they could start the adult use program.
Can you talk to me just a little bit about kind of the steps you had to go through in order to get your medical cultivation license for someone who might be interested, you know, however long it may take to get into the recreational space that isn't already in it?
Sure. So we had to, on the front end of the medical program, there was an application period. And the way that the state of Ohio did it, they graded those applications based on who's the most qualified and who is funded well enough to be able to run a facility. And so what they actually made us do was get bonds in addition to all that to make sure that essentially we could produce what we said we could produce in our applications. And they were extremely strict on anything that you put into your application, you must put into your facility before you can get open. It was a very expensive proposition on the front end, and it was a very rigorous process. As you people that were any part of or around it at the time know, there were 1,000 applicants for dispensaries. There was 110 applicants for cultivation facilities. Of those, initially only 24 won. And so the front end was extremely difficult. It's extremely expensive. What a lot of people don't realize is the capital commitment on the front end, the amount of money that you have to put in to create even the smallest of businesses. You know, I'm a small local guy, and I go out and bring in investors and take on loans just to be able to do that on the front end and for a very small cultivation facility.
Where's your cultivation facility located at?
It's in Oberlin, Ohio, which is about 35 minutes west of Cleveland.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, I will ask you one more question before I let you go here. I know you're busy at the conference. You got a lot of stuff going on today. Wanted to check in with you about anything that you see in terms of the rollout of the way this is happening that gives you cause for concern about the way, you know, people are really anxious. They want to get their stuff here in Ohio. They don't want to have to do things that are technically illegal here in Ohio in order to get their recreational marijuana. Anything that's giving you cause for pause about the way this is rolling out?
Well, listen, there's a lot of good and a lot of bad with any program. Ohio is not exempt from that. At the end of the day, my opinion is they need to get this program open and then get it right. I've expressed that to the regulators. The biggest cause for concern that I have is the legislators. And if I'm going to be frank, a lot of them don't really fully understand the program or the nuances of the program. And yet, obviously they make the laws, and so they could change anything, everything, or nothing. And at this point, what we're asking is for them to really think about any changes they make. There are certain things that they could change and should change for the better. But I think that allowing the program to begin and then making tweaks with the input of the people that are in the program, the people that live this day in and day out, I think that's going to be the best path forward for the program. So I would just beg the regulators and the legislators, talk to us, ask us questions. Let's come to some kind of understanding of what makes sense to change. But please don't just blanket change the entire program. It will delay the rollout, and it does, in my opinion, change the will of the people and deny what the people of Ohio have voted in favor of.
Well, a lot of people definitely agree with you on that. A lot of questions about what's going on in the legislature as we work to actually see issue 2 implemented. Fadi, I want to thank you very much for your time and having this conversation with us. We appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So there you go. Fadi Boumitri, he is the one who is breaking the news here. Well, it was available information as well on the Division of Cannabis Control website, but
I wasn't aware of it.
I was not aware either. Within issue 2, you will get the cheaper rate if you have the medical marijuana license. You won't be subject to that 10% adult use excise tax.
Quick qualifier on that, though, in fairness, as somebody who did have a prescription for ulcerative colitis and still does, there is a fee, obviously, and you actually have to pay to get the license. You got to go to the doctor's visit and stuff like that. So that's a
true.
cost too, as well. Although I don't know, maybe insurance covers that now. We should have had some other one. We should get 19 more experts on here to tell us about every single aspect.
So I don't know, in fairness, I don't know how much it costs to get an Ohio medical marijuana license in there. In the interview with Fadi, he referenced it, and I don't know if he was being hyperbolic,
Right.
but he said it costs like a penny to get it now.
Mine was like $300 altogether.
Oh, that's a
But it was
lot.
early on too. Things might have
Yeah.
changed. I don't know. Don't go by that.
Yeah, and also though, you are being monitored by a doctor. That is part of it. So there is like a copay situation or
Yeah.
whatever that would cost you out of pocket.
I
So
probably also got ripped off by a shady doctor on the side of the highway. Who knows? Don't go by me.
let's hope not. I do also want to note this though too. Some of the other things under the issue 2 as it passed. If you consume marijuana, just consume it. It's illegal to buy or own a firearm in the state of Ohio. So if you have a medical marijuana
Fascinating.
license, yes. So if you've got that license, that is a pretty strong indication that you're consuming marijuana. So that it's probably going to preclude
So,
you
Sadie, I can't own a gun and a marijuana license at the same time, or I can't fire a gun?
You cannot buy
can't
or
buy a
own
gun.
a firearm
Interesting.
if you have a medical marijuana license, because it's illegal to do that if you consume marijuana in the
Wow.
state of Ohio.
But it is not illegal to do that if you drink 190 beers.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure there are probably laws about being drunk and firing a weapon. But you could buy one.
You could buy one.
Yeah.
Interesting, though. Weird discrepancy there. But oh well. I also want to give one more credit before we move on, and before we wrap up the show entirely.
Okay.
And that's to our colleague whose head has been here the whole time. I do
No,
want to take I want to take a moment and give one more credit to Justin, whose tiny head has been here the entire time on Ohio Has Issues. And that can't be an easy spot for you, Justin, and I appreciate you. Give us a wave. Oh, I'm so sorry, Justin. You're fine. There he is. Hi, Justin. Sorry, man. Thanks.
Appreciate you.
He does deserve credit.
He does.
Yeah.
He does. All right, I think that's it, unless I forgot something.
Well, wouldn't that be the perfect show to do it on? Thank you for watching Ohio Has Issues. We hope that you've left smarter than you came in. I know I did.
I learned a lot. September 7th. That's the answer to your question. When are you going to be able to buy recreational marijuana in Ohio? Or sooner, because the legislature could make it sooner.
Yeah.
They could also make it later, but I don't think they will.
Thanks so much for watching. Thanks to Beebs on the ones and twos, as always, our producer. And you guys, just chill out and enjoy yourselves. Ohio Has Issues is over.
Oh no.